It's the year 198X. The bulb of the torture cell is lit and hung right on the head of the prisoner. The prisoner is turned using the chains tied to his hands. His body is covered in bruises and blood he received after being tortured. Even his feet are tied so that he cannot resist using them. A fly is sitting on his face sucking his blood. It is crawling on his face, but he still looks calm despite all his irritation. Food is the first word that comes out of his mouth after all the interrogation and torture. The head officer is surprised to hear what he just said. One of the torturers says that the South Korean army may serve the spies with food, but they do not. The prisoner says that he will confess everything as they want if they give him some food as he is starving. The head officer asks if he meant it. He says he will provide him with some food, but he has to tell him about his goals and infiltration route in return. The prisoner agrees and says he was just trying to make a living by joining the army, but this way, he will just die starving. The head officer orders the subordinate to bring some food from the kitchen, but he questions his order, so he gets angry and asks him to shut his mouth. He tells them that they have to hand over this prisoner to their superiors tomorrow, and they will steal their merits if they cannot get the information from him. So the prisoner is unhung and is served the food. He is given the spoon and the chopsticks to eat the food, but his hands are still chained. He holds the spoon with his fingers and starts taking the soup. He says that this soup tastes like nothing. Then he picks one of the chopsticks, saying military food always tastes horrendous. One of the subordinates says that the taste of the food is not important right now. He should just eat and inform them about him. Suddenly, that chopstick spear was in the head of the head office. At first, he does not understand what has happened, but then he falls on the table as he is dead now. The soldiers are shocked to see this as they cannot notice anything happening. The prisoner tells him that the taste of the food matters. He is holding the second stick in his hand. All those torturers run towards him to kill him, but he kills them all with that one chopstick. He tells those dead men he is a senior intelligence sergeant named Janggon, and his infiltration route was swimming through the ocean, and his goal was to kill them the same way he just did. Then he sees the fly irritating him earlier, so he aims at it with that stick and kills it. After a while, Janggon is sitting with Lieutenant Colonel Park in a small restaurant in Seoul City. The lieutenant tells him that no one is like him in their company. Why does he want to leave? Janggon replies that the military food has lost its taste, but it looks delicious here. The lieutenant smiles and adds the meat chunks to the bone soup. He gives the rest to Janggon. Janggon picks a piece with the chopstick and says he does not eat like Park. He takes some rice without scooping everything at once, then adds it to the soup. This way, he can enjoy the food until the end without the leftover rice getting soggy. While he is eating, Park asks him if he is not going to stop because of that operation. Janggon asks what he is asking as he just came back after finishing this time's process. Park says that Janggon knows exactly which function he is talking about. Park says that at that time, the plan was to come back alive, and when he came back alone, he did not fail. Janggon says it is not about that operation. After a pause in the conversation, he says thank you to Park for taking on him and helping him make a living. Park says he did everything right and hopes Janggon will be recognized for his abilities even after he leaves. 1 year after at a construction site, two laborers comment on Janggon's work that he is very efficient at carrying heavy loads and digging. It is lunch break time. Janggon is going towards the bank. Here he looks at a girl on the counter who is busy dealing with an older woman. That girl looks towards him and he waves at her smilingly. It all began 1 year ago when he started working at a construction company. When he got his first wage, the owner advised him to save money for the future as it would help him do what he wanted. But he did not know what he wanted to do in the future at that time. Still, he went to the nearest bank during his lunch break and opened an account there. That day, he saw Sienna for the first time and fell in love with her at first sight. And after that, he started going there every day during lunch break to see her. He found out she belonged to a low-income family and started working there right after graduating high school. He also told her that he was a soldier. She asked him if he did not save any money during his military service. He tells her that he saved money then but gave it to the families of soldiers who died. Now he is working hard again to save more money. Today he is here again to deposit some money into his savings account. She asks him to deposit money once a month. Otherwise, it's much work for him. He says he is fine this way as he can see her daily by coming here every day. And that's how he found a reason to live well. But still, he cannot live well. He listens to the news on TV while lying on the sofa at home. He thinks about his past and that the moment he grew up, he took training for every popular skill and survived missions of great difficulty. Suddenly, someone knocks at his door. He asks who is there. The person asks if this is the first sergeant Do. He opens the door partially and asks who he is. The person introduces him as Joe Timoon and says they have worked together. Janggon is surprised to see Ti-moon well-dressed and wearing a costly watch. He asks Ti-moon how he found him. Ti-moon replies that he searched for him everywhere and eventually found him. He tells Janggon that he has a job request for him. Janggon asks what kind of job it is. He replies that the sort he is best at. Janggon says he does not want to get his hands dirty for money. Ti-moon clarifies that he does not want him to kill anyone. He wants him to teach someone a lesson. Janggon gets serious and asks him to be honest about what he wants. Ti-moon says he is a successful entrepreneur in the public's eyes, but in reality, he is the boss of a gang, and the person he wants him to care for is the boss of another team. Janggon tells him that he did not leave his army job to do something like that. Ti-moon asks what he means by something like that. He asks if he quit his job to live in a place like that while working a construction job. Janggon asks him to be careful about what he says. Ti-moon says if he agrees to do this job, he will pay him 50 million won, and with that money, he can buy a good house or start a business to improve his life. Janggon thinks he cannot save that much even in 10 years while working this construction job. Ti-moon gives him his card and says he can visit him here if he changes his mind. Before leaving, he says that it is strange that someone like him tries to avoid the work he is best at. Janggon puts that visiting card on the side table. While lying on the floor, he thinks he did not come here to live like that, but he can try to do what he had been doing just a bit longer and find out if he really cannot live without doing that thing he is good at. While thinking about this, he falls asleep. The next day at the construction site, many racks of cement bags are present there. When he arrives, his boss asks him to carry all these bags up where needed. He asks where the other workers are. The boss replies that he just called him for today as he saw him the other day carrying loads, and he thinks he can do this work without any help. Janggon looks at his smiling face and wonders if this guy is for real. Siana and her colleague are standing outside the bank, taking tea. She looks at the sky and asks how he will get through today. Her colleague asks why she is saying that. Her face always lightens up when it is lunchtime. Siana asks what she is talking about. Her colleague replies that she is nice to Janggon. It seems she is interested in him. Siana replies that he will add money to his savings account during lunch break. If this were a store, he would be one of their regular customers, so she would have to treat him nicely. Her colleague says she is probably right, as Janggon could be better looking and rich. This comment makes Siana uncomfortable. She smiles and says he might not be handsome but has a nice body. Her colleague replies that he works at a construction site and has to lift bricks and heavy loads all day. Siana says her father also used to work at the construction site but never had a body like his. She leans on her and thinks she should get her nose out of her business and stay out of hers. She warns her that she knows about her affair with that manager who looks down on them. While sitting on her counter, she wonders why she got mad earlier when talking about Janggon. Suddenly, he enters the bank and waves at her. She says it is not the lunch break yet, so why is he here? He replied that he would be busy later and came a little early. She asks if he is here to put money in his account. He says he just came to see her as he is going somewhere. She tries to understand what he is talking about. He waves goodbye at her and says he will put a lot of money in his account once he returns. Her cheeks become red by thinking that he just came to see her here. He takes a ticket to Decent and takes the bus to meet Ti-moon. While sitting on the bus and looking at that visiting card, things will probably get better if he does so. Ti-moon and his driver are already there to pick him up when he reaches Decent. While sitting in the car, Ti-moon shows the picture of the target named Park Gwan-ho. He tells him that they are both fighting for the rights to the tourist hotel's slot machines. According to the rules, he cannot fight him directly as this way. He will lose the right to the devices. But if an unknown outsider that has nothing to do with their ordeal suddenly shows up and does this, things would run smoothly, and he can get those rights. He warns Janggon that it will not be easy as Park knows he will come for him, so he is under full security. He suggests that they should wait for a bit until he lowers his guard. Janggon asks him what time it is. Ti-moon startles at this question of his. He tells him that it is past 12:30. Janggon says it means there is much time left until 4:30 p.m. The banks are close now. He asks him to take him to Park so he can take care of him quickly. Then Ti-moon can deposit money in his bank account before the banks close. Ti-moon says if he goes now, he will have to fight many guys on security. Janggon thinks it should not bother him. Ti-moon takes him to the hotel where Park and his underlings are having lunch. He also warns him about the special guard of the park who is always with Park. That guy used to be a siren player. Janggon asks what is the best dish at this restaurant. The driver informs him that the special word here is their fried dumplings. Janggon says he will be back soon and gets out of the car. Park is enjoying his lunch while all his underlings are also present there. Janggon is sitting at a separate table in the corner, having the fried dumplings in front of him. He takes soy sauce and vinegar in a 1-to-1 ratio and pours them into a bowl. Then he sparkles the powdered red pepper in it. He dips the dumpling in it and eats it. The taste of the food satisfies him. He finishes his meal, drinks, and thanks God for this delicious meal. After that, he throws the glass toward Park, smashing it into the wall behind him. That fat guy asks what is wrong with him. Janggon says he is trying to pick a fight as his boss's noises while chewing food is annoying. Park weirdly looks at him and orders his boys to get him, and they all run toward him to attack him. After a while, scattered food, broken furniture, and beaten men are everywhere on the floor. Only Janggon is standing, keeping his hands inside his pockets. Park is leaning by the wall in the destroyed state. He asks him who he is, as there is no way he did not know a man as powerful as him in this field. Janggon replies that he can remember him as an outsider with severe anger management issues. He smirks while his nose is bleeding and asks who sent him. He says he will pay him double the amount if he works with him. Janggon thinks if that guy has enough money to pay him 100 million won. Park gets that he is paid very handsomely. He says that it does not matter because. Janggon asks him because what? Why has he stopped speaking? Suddenly, he realizes that someone is behind him. That fat guy is holding a stole in his hands and ready to attack him. Janggon defends himself by using his arms when that guy attacks. He feels immense pain, like something inside his body has broken. He is about to hit him again, but Janggon kicks between his legs quickly. Tears ran down his face because of the pain. He falls to the ground and becomes unconscious. Janggon looks at Park and asks him if it is 4:30 p.m. He looks at his watch and says it is not even 2 p.m. Janggon says it is good and walks away. Janggon and Taemoon come out of the bank after depositing money in Janggon's account. Taemoon says he did not think that they would have made it before the bank closing time. He asks what Janggon is going to do with this money. He replies that he is not sure but saw some apartments near the bus terminal this morning and may buy one. Taemoon says that the neighborhood is not very good. He should look for an apartment somewhere in the middle of Seoul. Janggon thinks he can try stocks as well as everyone does nowadays. Taemoon asks if he has a store in his mind. He suggests that he can go for Han Electronics as there is no chance for a company to go bankrupt who is responsible for supplying electricity to the whole country. Janggon says Sam Electronics seems fine to him as the new chairman of that company is a smart guy. Suddenly, he feels pain like he just got an electric shock. He asks if they can go to the hospital as it hurts where he earned a hit. Taemoon says they can go to the hospital that he visits regularly. Janggon asks what he means by regularly. He replies that there is an old doctor who does not seem surprised when he shows up there after getting stabbed or hurt. Both arms got plastered, and he wonders what has happened to him. The doctor tells him that his arms are fractured. The cracks will take a month to heal. Janggon shockingly asks if he has to stay like this for a month. The doctor warns him not to use his arms as it will delay the healing process. Janggon does not like the state he has stuck in. Taemoon mocks him and says someone will have a difficult time from now. They both go to a bar and drink. Janggon feels great but then asks if he can drink in this state. Taemoon asks if he does not remember how he taught them to drink to heal the wounds. Janggon laughs and says it's been a while since he heard that line. They both keep drinking and remembering their old days in the army when they worked together. Taemoon says he always knew that Janggon was strong but didn't know he would beat so many people in such a short time. Moreover, he won the fight with his bare hands. He says he also had prepared weapons in case he needed them. Janggon asks how he managed to get weapons. While pouring more whiskey, Taemoon tells him that shotguns are easily available, but he smuggles pistols from Russia. Janggon says he has found a job that suits him well. He replies that the army served him better. He says the special forces did Janggon well and asks why he left that job. He becomes gloomy and says he and 3 juniors participated in a mission, but he was the only one who came back alive. Taemoon is shocked. Janggon says he felt he no longer had the right to continue the job, so he quit. He assumed they would come in his dreams, but they never did. Maybe they hate him very much. Taemoon asks him to have another drink. They both look at all those empty bottles and realize they have drunk a lot. Janggon stands up and says he is leaving. Taemoon asks him how he would go home now. Janggon says he will take the bus because he wants to sleep in a bed. Taemoon thinks he can book him a room in a hotel, and he can go tomorrow. But Janggon leaves anyways. While walking on the pavement, he feels like he has eaten too much, so he sits on the bench. But as he had drunk too much, he fell asleep on the court. A van from a homeless guidance center passes by him and stops seeing him lying on the bench. Some workers see this drunken man with both arms crippled lying there. They decide to bring him in and give him some guidance, so they take him with them to the Decent Welfare Society. Janggon sees a dream. He is in a field, and it is dark everywhere. Someone is calling his name. He turns back sharply as the voice is coming from behind. He sees two men in uniforms. Those two are wearing the same lockets. He recognizes them as if they were his junior fellows on that mission. Suddenly, he sees a gun on the ground near his feet. He picks it up and puts it on his head and says if this is what they want, he will do it. Suddenly, he wakes up from his dream. He sees a guy clapping near his head to wake him up. Janggon sits, but his arms are still hurting. He asks that guy who he is and where he is now. He tells him his name is Lee Sunjo, and this place is a decent welfare facility. That outfit is inmates' clothing. While he is explaining all that, Janggon stands up and walks away. Sunjo asks him where he is going. Janggon stops near the door as it is locked. He wonders why it is locked from the inside. Sunjo says he was going to explain that first. He tells him that this is where people are imprisoned by force. Janggon is shocked and asks what he is talking about. Someone calls them from behind and asks what they are doing standing there. Sunjo tells him that that person is their platoon leader and has a bad temper, so Janggon must not irritate him. But he is looking at the keys pinned to his arm. He asks him to give him the door keys. That guy looks at him with anger, so Janggon kicks his leg, and he yells in pain. He wants to punch in his face, but then remembers what the doctor told him about not using his arm, so he stops. Two of that leader's subordinates ask for permission to crush Janggon. That guy orders them to send him to the ward. One of them moves forward to beat him. Janggon thinks he can beat them even with his injured arms, but if Sunju is right and they are imprisoned there forcibly, it would be difficult to escape with injured arms. To escape from here, his arms need to be healed properly, but his injuries will likely worsen if his arms get hit even mistakenly. So what should he do? At the same time, Sunju comes forward and tells them that this guy just came in last night and did not know where he was, and he has no idea who a great platoon commander is. Therefore, he behaves arrogantly. That guy thinks that it makes sense. Sunju says they should give him one chance and he will educate him properly. That guy thinks and asks Janggon to beg for mercy. Sunju asks him to beg and say that it was all his fault. Janggon is still shocked and processing what is happening here but bends his head and apologizes. But that guy punches in his head and asks him to behave better. Then he asks everyone to go and prepare for the roll call. While sitting in a row, Sunju tells him that he did great and that he will explain things a bit later. Janggon observes that he is counting the people. He says there are 24 people, including the new guy. Then he unlocks the door. While going out, Janggon asks Sunju where they are going, and he replies that they will have breakfast. After listening to the name of breakfast, he becomes happy. He observes the surroundings and thinks that this is not a military base, but it acts like one. It is not even a prison, but it locks people. But the strangest thing is that they call this a breakfast. He wants to stab the person in charge with a chopstick in his forehead, but they only give them a spoon. While eating the food, Sunju tells him this place is where the homeless people are brought in and guided. Janggon says he is not homeless. Sunju says none of the people there are homeless. This place is actually where anyone is captured and forced to work. The country funds every homeless person here, and to get that money, welfare imprisons people. Janggon is shocked to hear that and asks who does this to humans. Suddenly, two well-suited men enter the room. Sunju tells him that these are the people who do this to humans. These two are the director's sons. The one with the glasses is Park Gwang, the vice president here. The taller one is Park Yeon, and he is the general manager. Janggon looks at them and guesses that they are inspecting there. Gwang asks him how he got these injuries on his arms. Sunju tells him that Janggon is the new inmate who came here last night. Gwang asks if it would be possible for him to live on welfare like this. Sunju says he is taken good care of and will teach him everything. Gwang appreciates his efforts. Sunju says he wants to be an honor student. Gwang gets his intentions and says he will remember his name the next time he picks for this post. Now Janggon also finds the real motives of Sunju for being so nice to him. Gwang asks Janggon if the food here tastes good. He replies that the food is really bad here. Gwang asks what he just said. Sunju also starts worrying as he is doing well in front of the platoon leader, but now he misbehaves again. Janggon says he does not think this food is for even humans, as everything is so rotten in this food. Gwang lifts the tray and pours it on his head. He says he should thank them for giving him this food. He smashes the tray in his head and says how he dares to complain about anything. Blood rushes into their eyes of Janggon due to anger, but he does nothing due to his fractured arms. Gwang yells at Sunju to teach him, so he says nothing crazy anymore. After they leave, Sunju asks Janggon if he is all right. Janggon is cleaning himself after that humiliation at the breakfast table. He cannot even clean himself properly due to his fractured arms. After that, he and Sunju brush the ground outside as this is their assigned work. Janggon says that his clothes are not drying properly as he wore them right after washing them up. He is still angry because of what Gwang did to him earlier. Sunju tells him that his clothes will dry automatically when he works under the sun. He says he should be relieved that Gwang did this to him before bath time. Otherwise, he would have to wait to clean himself. He replies that it is unethical to do this to the people. An old bald inmate comes there carrying clothes to wash and agrees with the newcomer. Janggon notices that his way of talking is a bit strange. Sunju calls him Your Excellency and asks why he is here. Janggon wonders if he meant the president when he called him Your Excellency. A man calls him from behind and says that His Excellence was washing the clothes. So what is he doing outside there? His Excellence asks why it is he always who has to do the washing of clothes. Janggon asks why that guy was being referred to as Your Excellence, and why does he speak like he is the president. Sunju says it is not that he is impersonating the president, but that he thinks he is the president. That old man returned from the Vietnam War and has been insane. He sees things and has nightmares. He was scared to see that bald president and shuddered whenever he saw him on the news. As he ages, he is balding, and he cannot look in the mirror as it reminds him of that bald president. Janggon says it is very unfortunate that he had to suffer through that owl. He asks Sunju how he knows that much about him. He replies that the older adult's friend was also locked up there, and he told him everything but died due to some disease. Janggon shocks and asks if he died here at this place. Sunju says many people die here, some due to injuries, some because of sickness, or some because of getting beaten up by the staff or platoon leader. He says the platoon leader said about sending him to the ward earlier if he remembers. If someone is sent to the ward, they do not treat him there. They leave him until he dies. Janggon says that these are the bad guys. Suddenly, the platoon leader calls everyone to assemble at the sports field. Sunju tells him that today is inquiry day, and he can see the worst guy among all the bad guys. Janggon wonders what he is talking about. All the inmates there stand in rows to listen to the director of this welfare. His name is Park In-ye. Everyone bows in front of him. In-ye starts addressing and says there are various trees in the world, each of which has its use. Likewise, humans also have their use according to their perspective, characters, and potential. However, those standing before him are worthless beings who are completely worthless outside. He calls them twisted and unattractive trees. Then he says that just like Jesus, he became a carpenter, pruning and trimming useless trees like them so they can find their worth. Everyone starts clapping unwantedly. Janggon does not like all the nonsense he is saying shamelessly. While pretending to listen to him, he discovers the structure of the welfare facility. This place is made by cutting off the middle of the mountain. Most of the place is surrounded by a high wall. The only place without the wall is the cliff where the mountain was cut. There is only one main gate. Those guards will attack him simultaneously if he tries to escape through the gate, so it is difficult to escape with these arms. And he walks down the stage. He hugs his sons and says thank you for caring for this place. Gwang goes on the stage and announces the name of the inmate selected as the honor student. Sunju is excited and hopeful that he might be selected as an honor student. Janggon asks him what an honor student is. He replies that it is the person selected to send home from the welfare. Gwang says that the person selected this time is Kwak Daeyong. Gwang calls him onto the stage to say something. Daeyong thanks him and says he is happy as he is finally going home. He is taken to the staff office, where he asks when he will be sent home. Gwang tells him that the doctor will come and check his health last time before he is sent home. After a while, the doctor comes there, does a general checkup of him, and declares him healthy. Then he gives him an injection by saying it is a nutrient that will keep him healthy outside. Soon, Daeyong falls unconscious. Two people carry him outside when Gwang asks them to remove his outfit as a newcomer can use it to save money. The doctor calls Gwang amazingly and asks how he can think about saving money in this situation. He replies that he is not nonsense like him, who gambled away all his money and now working under him. He warns him to stay within his limits if he wants to save himself. Daeyong is lying unconscious in the operating theater room. The doctor asks the helper about today's order. He says it is the liver and kidney. The helper asks if they should not put this guy on anesthetic gas as he may wake up anytime. The doctor thinks it is an insult and asks the helper to do what he asks. Meanwhile, Daeyong wakes up and sits wondering where he is. The doctor tells him they are examining him, so he is not scared. He punches the doctor in his face and runs away from there. While listening to the noise, the general manager punches Daeyong. He drags him to the operating theater and shuts the door. Taemoon and his informant are sitting in the same restaurant. That guy informs Taemoon that Gwanho and his men are hospitalized, so their organization is paralyzed for now. As a result, Congressman Choi's office granted them the right to operate a slot machine business right away. Taemoon puts his bowl down and laughs loudly, saying he will have a hangover. The informant tells him that Choi's office somehow already knows everything. It all happened in one day, and he said he would give them the business immediately. Ti-moon says Choi is a clever older man, and his cleverness and quick decision-making made him a member of the parliament. The informant says that he would like to cut the ribbon to celebrate the opening of the slot machine if Ti-moon has no problem with this. While eating the fried dumplings, Ti-moon remembers the moment when Janggon asked about the special food of this restaurant. He smiles and says that these fried dumplings are really good. Then he thinks if Janggon reached home safely as his arms were injured. Meanwhile, Janggon is capping the shower bottles at the welfare. Sunju says he has yet to tell him about his name, so he replies that his name is Janggon. Then Sunju asks him about the work he used to do outside. He thinks and answers that he used to do any work that used physical strength. Sunju asks if he injured his arms at his job place. He thinks about when that fat guy hit him with the chair and says yes. The platoon commander comes there and asks them if it is necessary to talk during work. Sunju gets terrified and apologizes to him. The platoon commander asks Janggon what he did in front of the vice president, angering him. Before he answers, the platoon commander asks him to forget about the question and be careful next time. He does not answer him, so that guy hits him in the head and asks him to answer. Janggon grins and says yes. He looks at the keys hanging with his arms and asks Sunju why the barracks door is locked from the inside. They should lock them in from outside if they want to lock them up. Sunju replies that a long time ago, someone came for inspection and said it is a problem to lock from the outside as it looks like a prison. Since that day, they have closed the doors from inside. He adds that they chose those to be the commander who had no authority outside, so they are obsessed with their new power and do not consider them prisoners. Janggon understands the whole situation now. Sunju says he feels jealous as that guy would reach home by now, yet he is stuck here. The doctor hands over the organ box to the general manager. The doctor asks him not to mention the incident that happened earlier to the vice president. That guy looks at him and then kicks him in his gut. He asks him to call the vice president, sir. He tells him that he should accept his mistakes and reflect on them. He throws an envelope of money in front of him and leaves. The doctor forgets about all the pain and guilt when he sees the money and starts thinking about the win in gambling today. The general manager goes to the smugglers and gives them the box. They pay him a handsome amount. He returns to his father's and gives him all the money. And he praises and asks him to rest, as delivering that box must have been difficult. Then he puts that money in a wallet full of cash and locks it afterward. Everyone sleeps there when they are made to get up early in the morning. While completing his bed, Janggon thinks he has been there for 4 days and has gotten used to this life. His intensive training experience during his active career helped him adapt to this environment. But one thing that is still ridiculous to him is the food. But he has no other choice until his arms heal, so he makes him believe he is on an operation to survive here. He wonders that he was scared of nothing a few days ago and had no worries, not even at life-threatening missions. But now, he worries about one thing. He cannot see Siana at the lunch break. What if she forgets about him in the meantime? On the other hand, she is also waiting for him and looking at the door hoping for him to show up. Her colleague asks him to have lunch as it is lunch break. While standing outside the bank, she questions why he has not shown up for several days. When he left, he said he would return with money. She hopes he is all well and nothing bad has happened to him. He thinks he is being held here by force, and his arms are also injured. She wonders if he has caught an accident. The platoon leader slaps him because he is working too slowly. That older man tells him he will work extra to compensate for this but not beat him as he is injured. The platoon commander grabs that older man, yells at him to stop favoring others, and reminds him that he has lost his mind. He replies that he has not lost his mind and is the country's president. The platoon commander punches him in the face and walks away. Janggon sees that older man crying with pain and gets furious. He stands up and calls names in anger. The platoon leader stops walking after listening to him calling names. Everyone in the room gets terrified. The platoon leader turns his face angrily and asks him if he has gone insane. Janggon stays calm and doesn't answer him. The two underlying platoon leaders look at him with anger. Janggon looks at them and thinks that he will also kill them if they are interrupted. That guy runs towards him to attack him, but Janggon jumps in the air and kicks him. The kick was so hard that the platoon leader fell to the ground and became unconscious. Those two runs towards him to beat him. Janggon thinks it is difficult to deal with 3 people simultaneously when both his arms are injured. But these two are different, and he can beat them easily. He looks at one of them and smirks to make him lose his cool, and it works. That guy attacks him repeatedly, but he dodges it every time. Then he finds the right moment and kicks his back knee. That guy grins with pain. Then Janggon throws an upper kick at his chin and knocks him down. He throws a single kick to the last guy and falls down. All the inmates there are surprised to see one man beating 3 people. After doing that, Janggon realizes that he lost his temper. He may get in trouble if an employee comes there and sees all this mess. Suddenly, Sunju starts cheering his name, and all the other inmates follow him. He tries to shut them down, but they don't. He worries that if any welfare worker comes now, things will become more complicated for him. And what was feared happens. A worker comes inside and asks what is all this noise about. All of a sudden, every inmate shuts their mouth. When that guy looks at the platoon leader fallen on the ground, he brings out his stick. He points it to him and asks if he is the one who did this. Janggon says nothing and thinks he can get rid of him if he kicks him, throws his stick away, hits his face with his head, and then kicks him in his abdomen. He questions himself if he should do this, because if he does, he will subdue this guy and get out of here. But in the end, he will be blocked by high walls and a steel gate. ND staff will approach and try to stop him with full force. Besides, they will be angry if they find out that he kicked a fellow of theirs. And in that situation, it would be difficult for him to protect his arms. He can knock down a few of them without using his arms, but if he gets a more severe arm injury, he won't be able to escape. So the best action to take right now is to apologize. So he bends down in front of him and says he did all that by mistake. At the same time, those two brothers come there. Wang asks if he is the one who caused this mess. Janggon realizes that things cannot be more complicated than now. Wang says it is amazing that a single man with injured arms took 3 guys alone. He says he thought him a fool who could not stand up for himself and just complained about the food. But he is certainly much more than that. He asks him what he was thinking while doing this. Then he says, how dare he believe in the first place? He tells him the rule that platoon members always listen to their leader. He has made that rule, and others have to follow it no matter what. Janggon thinks if this guy is for real who wants to control others' thinking. Wang glares at his face and says he still can see his mind behind his eyes, thinking about something. He tells him he will be in the punishment room for 3 days. Even Sunju is shocked to hear this punishment. Janggon thinks it sounds like a prison cell, and 3 days in a cell is not a big deal. Wang laughs hysterically and says that when he returns from that room, he will not have any thoughts behind his eyes. Wang asks him to reflect on himself in these 3 days of punishment. He waits for an answer, but Janggon does not speak and keeps looking into his eyes. Wang turns and looks at his brother as giving him a sign. Yom walks towards him and calls his name, but Janggon does not reply. So he punches in his face, breaks his nose, and it starts bleeding. Then he tells him to answer Gwang. Janggon says yes twice. Then the guy kicks them in his stomach and asks them to reply once. That guy is pushing Janggon's limits, but he has to stay calm. So he answers again and says yes. That guy again hits him in the back, asking him to answer loud and clear. Before sending him to the punishment room, Gwang wants him to make an example for others so they don't revolt against him. That employee takes him outside to lock him up in the punishment room. Sunju is worried about what will happen to him in the punishment room. Janggon looks back at him and smiles. Sunju thinks he must have gotten hits on his head multiple times after seeing him smiling. While walking towards the punishment room, he thinks about those hits he got and says that the general manager's fists are strong. He smiles, thinking his fists are even better, and he wants to fight with him once his arms completely heal. That welfare employee hits him in the head and asks him to hurry up. He replies that he is coming and thinks he will also beat this guy. Yom slaps at the face of the unconscious platoon leader. After getting that hit, he opens his eyes and sits while screaming, but seeing Yom in front of him shuts his mouth automatically. Yom asks him to come with him and tells other workers to go back to work as their break time is over. They take him outside. Wang tells him that, in his opinion, he is not fit to be a platoon leader anymore. He replies that it is not true and that he can be a leader. Wang asks him how he can say that after getting beaten and knocked out by a man who cannot even use his arms. He grabs his badge and asks how he can lead if weak. He thinks that he is not weak, but that guy is stronger and has short legs. But he cannot tell Wang as he will be removed as platoon leader after that. So he lies and says that he was attacked from behind. Therefore he could not protect himself. Wang asks if he wants to say he can beat him in the real fight. He orders him to go ahead and hit him right now. The platoon leader is terrified and asks if he has to fight him. Wang asks him how he can lead a platoon after being knocked out in front of his people. He tells him he has sent Janggon to the punishment cell for 3 days. Even he gets shocked to hear about the 3 days punishment there. Wang says that the fight between them will occur after he comes out of the punishment room after losing his mind. Now the platoon leader understands that Janggon is purposefully sent there as he would be mentally and physically weak after coming out, and he can defeat him easily. Wang pats his shoulder and asks if he can do this now. The commander says yes. Janggon is taken down to a basement. There is a huge cell made there, and they enter it. He sees some small rooms and thinks he expected the punishment room to be solitary confinement. But he wonders why they did make isolated rooms in the basement. He is shocked when that man opens a space and asks him to enter. The reason is that this is not a room. It is a locker where a person can barely fit. He wonders if they punish innocent people by locking them up here. That employee yells at him to move fast. He points the stick on his arm and asks him to get in before he breaks his arm. He goes inside and barely fits in there. He cannot even stand straight. The door is closed. The whole cell is dark and empty. Janggon thinks that when he was in military training, he was trained in all forms of torture that one could be put through when caught by the enemy. Chamber torture was one where the person could not sit or lie down, so he could not sleep properly in this uncomfortable position. The person cannot even eat, drink, or even pee. The person is forced to stay in this position. He thinks this kind of torture is used to break an enemy physically and mentally. But how can they use this kind of torture against normal people? But the more worrying thing right now is that he has to spend 3 days here. It is his first night in a torture chamber and 5th night in this welfare center overall. The 6th day starts when the sun lightens the sky and spreads beauty outside. A day has passed since Janggon was locked up in that punishment cell, but he is unaware of the time and all the other happenings outside. He wonders if it has been a day already. He is exhausted. He keeps falling asleep and waking up in this standing position. He is unsure if he slept or just closed his eyes briefly. But above all these things, he is hungry. He wants something to eat, and his tongue keeps saying one word: food. On the other side, in the 3rd platoon hall, Sunju is beaten by the platoon leader. Everyone else present there is terrified to see him like this. He is crying with pain as he is not used to it. The platoon leader yells at him and says he knows Sunju sided with Janggon while he was unconscious. He asks how he likes getting beaten for siding with him now. Sunju tries to say something, but the platoon leader kicks him in the leg and shuts him up. Your Excellency tries to make others feel shame as they all were involved in the rebellious scheme. But now everyone is hiding their face like they know nothing about it. The platoon leader grabs Sunju by his hair and says he will show him what happens to the guys who go against their leader. Then he hits his face with his knee and throws him on the floor. He keeps beating him with his foot. Your Excellency comes to him and asks him to stop this brutality and asks why he is picking on him. The platoon leader looks at him first and then kicks him so that he falls on Sunju. He asks how he thinks he is questioning. The platoon leader and his 2 underlings keep throwing kicks at them and calling them fraktia. And he is packing money in the shoe boxes in the director's office. He puts that money in the bags and says this is a bribe for the government workers. He prepares 3 bags and says the money is identical, so they hand them out in order. Wang asks Yom to come with him this time, and he agrees. Wang looks at a big box of money kept separated on the floor and asks what about this one. His father tells him to leave this one here as it is for someone else. Yom asks why there is so much money in this box, and he tells him that the person receiving this box is more than a government employee. He is a very important key to this country's management. Guang and Yom leave those government employees to hand them that bribe money. Yom asks Guang how these people are helping them in their business and getting this reward in return. Guang replies that they help them in various ways. He gives the example of Decent City Hall's welfare department worker. He helps them get government funds. Guang gives him that gift bag, and he replies that he feels obligated to do more for themselves. Guang tells him that he does not need to do anything else. He should keep working hard, as usual. Then he goes to the city's seaside and meets the Decent Police Station's chief. After seeing the shoe box, that guy says these shoes seem nice and heavy. Guang bends his head in respect and says that the manager has to run around the country for the citizens. He should keep doing what he does and run around in these shoes. He meets the last person on an empty road and gives him his present. This person is the Decent District's prosecutor. He holds the bag in a way like guessing the amount by weight. He replies to him in a coded way and says that he likes apples, though, but pears can do this time. Guang assures him that he will bring apples once they are in season. As that prosecutor leaves, Guang murmurs that he does not need to be picky about it and take what they give him. He tells Yom that these people suppress any attempt by a whistleblower to expose the truth about their welfare center to the public. Then he gives him some money. Yom is surprised and asks if he took some of the bribe money. Guang asks how they can bribe someone if they do not get anything for the trouble they face. He tells him that he also took some of the bribes last time, and nobody noticed. That's why he brought him here, as brothers should share the good things. Yom thanked him for looking after him. After sitting in the car, Guang says they should go to eat something good as they have done a good job. They order some cooked meat at the restaurant. Guang makes a bit by putting a piece of meat and some herbs on a lattice leaf and feeds Yom with his hands. He watches him chew the food and says he eats so well. They enjoy these little treats. Gwang stops eating when Yom calls him and asks if he is serious about forcing the platoon leader and Janggon to fight when he is out. Gwang replies why he is asking that. He asks Yom if he thinks a guy in the punishment room for 3 days has a chance of winning. Yom replies that he knows there is no chance of winning for a normal person in this situation. But that guy took down 3 guys with broken arms. Yom says he thinks maybe. Gwang interrupts him here and says it is about that maybe. He asks Yom if he thinks Janggon will be useful to them if he is really that strong. Yom asks whether being useful is another matter, but how will Gwang get him to listen to him when he can beat up a platoon leader? Gwang says it is almost impossible for now, but if he breaks him this time due to the punishment room, he can make him follow every one of his orders. It has been 2 days since he was locked in the punishment room. Janggon could not sleep for 2 days straight. His face looks like a lost soldier with 100 years of sadness. He is starving, and his mouth is saying words about all the foods he can think of right now. He is giving his mind and body a reason to keep living and not give up. Right then, he thinks of another reason he should keep fighting for. It is Ms. Siana. Her bright and smiling face comes before his eyes, and he remembers that he still has to take her out for a meal. He picturizes the scene in his mind when he asks her to have dinner with him, and she will happily accept his proposal. And when she asks what they should eat, he will answer that it does not matter as long as he is dining with her. He is speaking these words while trying hard to keep himself alive. Another night comes in this hell, and his 3rd day ends in this punishment room. The next day, as the locker is opened, he thuds on the ground as he does not have the power to control his body. He hardly lifts his neck and looks upward. Gwang looks at him and smirks while saying these are the defeated eyes he wants to see. Gwang orders them to move Janggon from here. Janggon is lying on the floor and cannot move due to the lack of energy. Sunju and His Excellency are standing near the bars. They come there and help him stand by supporting him. Sunju looks at him and says he is not looking good and that they should move him out fast. They aid him in walking, and they all follow Gwang while passing through the empty ground. Janggon looks at Sunju's face and asks him if he is all right and what happened to his face. Sunju tells him that he was beaten by the platoon leader for siding with him that day, and they also did beat His Excellency for raising his voice for Sunju. But his goodness smiles and says he is all right when Janggon looks towards him. He feels pity for him. He asks Sunju where they are going as he is starving and wants to eat something. Sunju says they are not going to get anything to eat for now. All the inmates are gathered on the ground and look terrified. The platoon leader looks cool and is ready to fight. Janggon is also brought here. He looks miserable as he is barely standing. He gets that they are trying to make him fight with the patio commander as soon as he gets out of the punishment room. The platoon leader remembers what Gwang told him that day. He has to save some face as he could not lead after being knocked out in front of people. He thinks that he already wins this fight. All he has to do is beat Janggon while acting as if nothing is wrong. Gwang laughs and says this is just like watching a gladiator duel. But Yom does not laugh at his joke. He looks at Janggon and says his state makes this more of an execution than a duel, but still, it will be fun to watch. Gwang orders to commence the fight. Both of them are brought in front of each other. The referee tells them to begin when he gives them a signal. Janggon thinks that he wants to rest for a while. The platoon leader looks at his friends as they try to tell him something. The referee gives the green signal to start the fight. The platoon leader screams the way like trying to intimidate Janggon. He recalls yesterday's meeting with his friends. He told them he would fight Janggon as soon as he came out. He was still worried as they all knew how powerful Janggon was and how he beat them all with his legs. He said that Janggon would be in the best state after coming out but still wanted to ensure his victory in the fight. His friend told him that there was a way. He said that Janggon's arms were injured, so he should kick his arms as the war started. It would hurt him like hell, and he would not be able to fight back. The platoon leader said it was a cheap trick but could bring him victory. As the fight starts, the platoon leader runs towards him, screaming with full power, while Janggon does not move from his place, thinking it will only end if he gets beaten. He wants him to hit him and get it over with, as he has no will to fight. But suddenly, he remembers his injured arms and that he cannot let him hit them. So when the platoon leader throws a kick targeting his arms, he bends backward to dodge it. The platoon leader did not expect that and was shocked. Janggon turns back to attack and throws a back kick in his stomach. The platoon leader screams in pain, and his face becomes red. Yom is surprised to see that move of his and wonders if he trained in martial arts. Gwang forgets to close his mouth, and the laugh that was there for a while dies. Water is streaming down from the platoon leader's eyes and mouth. He thinks if Janggon just came out of the punishment room. If yes, how could he be so strong? Janggon looks at the injured faces of Sunju and His Excellency, who were beaten for cheering for him that day. It increases his anger, and the desire to take revenge rises in his mind. He looks at the platoon leader, who can see what will happen to him next. Janggon kicks his face and breaks his nose so that it starts bleeding. This one hit makes him fall to the ground. All the eyes forget to blink. All the faces there are extremely shocked. Janggon is not cooled yet, so he keeps hitting him with kicks on his face. The friends of the platoon leader are terrified to see what is happening there. Sunju gets excited and again starts cheering for him. Your Excellency is happy too, and says he always believed in him. The platoon leader seems half dead as foam comes out of his face. Janggon goes near Gwang and asks him if he is satisfied now. Gwang replies that he is a funny guy and, yes, he is completely satisfied. So he says he is going to. But before he completes his sentence, his eyes shut automatically and he falls to the ground. The referee runs towards him to check if he is alright. Gwang inquires about what happened to him. The referee looks at his face and says he is sleeping. Gwang smirks and says this guy is extremely amusing, and he has thought of a good and fun idea for him. Janggon was sleeping peacefully, but suddenly he opened his eyes. He sees Sunju standing beside him, excited to see him awake. Janggon looks weak and cannot open his eyes properly. He asks in his feeble voice what happened. Sunju replies carelessly that he fell asleep and that Sunju carried him over here. He also skipped work today to be here with him. Janggon tries to sit up. Suddenly he sees the ribbon and keys attached to his arm and asks Sunju what this is. Sunju tells him that the vice president named him the 3rd platoon's new leader when he was asleep. He looks at him and asks if he is telling the truth. Gong and Yom are in the office. Yom looks a bit worried about something. Wang makes tea and adds tea, sugar, and milk, 2 spoons each. He gives Yom his cup and asks him to be careful as it is hot. While sipping tea, Yom asks him what he was thinking back then. Wang says what he wants to ask if he doesn't like the taste of tea as it tastes fine to him. Yom replies that he is talking about that. He is asking why he made Janggon the platoon leader. Wang replies that the first and most important reason is that the previous leader was weaker than he anticipated, and Janggon is stronger than he thought, so he will be of use when they need it. Yom says that, in his opinion, Janggon is not just a regular guy who knows how to fight. He thinks about his fighting style and says he is a trained fighter. Wang asks him what he wants to say here. Yom replies that if Janggon's arms get fully healed, they might not be able to control him anymore. Wang says if he does not know. Yom asks, know what? Wang tells him that only one of their employees must command a platoon. Does he not find it weird? He asks him to picture that if 20 of 30 inmates attack that one employee all at once, that would take no effort to overpower him. If they think about it according to physical aspects, it makes sense. But not a single inmate goes out of the line and attacks that one employee. Why do they hesitate to do so if they can do it physically? Yom says there are 2 possible reasons. First, they eat each other out. Second, they think that other employees can quickly provide backup. Even if they try, they know they'll likely only get as far as the barricades and walls. Then they will be beaten and put in the punishment room. Wen says that is not the exact reason for those inmates not to rebel against them. The actual reason is the fear and the feeling of helplessness that controls them and keeps them in the line. He gives him an example. In Southeast Asia, when they train the elephants, they tie the baby elephant and beat them with iron hooks to make them fear humans. Then, even when the elephant grows up and can stomp a person to death, it cannot do it because it is afraid of humans. Janggon is like that baby elephant. They have to train him in the same manner as they train others. Yom asks if it is really necessary to make him the platoon leader. Wang says it is required as this position will make him loosen up and relax. And as time passes, he will accept this place as his home, just like the others. Janggon is lying on his bed while those 2 guys sit on the floor near him. They ask him to forgive them for what they did in the past to him. Janggon was told that the previous platoon leader was sent to the ward after the fight. Now his followers are pleading for their lives on their knees. He tells them they ask him for forgiveness, but he cannot forgive them. Their faces become gloomy, and they ask why. He tells them he cannot ignore them as he has nothing to forgive. He has not been there long and has no grudges against those 2. They become a bit relaxed after listening to this. Janggon asks them to look behind and tells them they should ask for forgiveness from their inmates, who look in a mood to take revenge. Janggon yawns and says they should talk it out amongst themselves. He is going to sleep again. Those 2 keep saying please to save them, but he turns his face and sleeps. After waking up, he wonders if lying down like that ever made him this happy. Then he looks at the keys and armband and wonders why they gave him these things. He remembers that they were just about to make an example out of him when he came out of the punishment room. They hoped to save some of that platoon leader's face from his last defeat. But then their plan got ruined by him when he knocked that guy down. and they probably sent him to the ward because he was no longer useful after losing to him twice. He says he can understand their plan till this part, but what could be the reason for making him the platoon leader? Do they think that giving him this position will get him addicted to the taste of power like that guy was? In this way, they can make him listen to them. He smirks and says how adorable this is. Who they think he is. He says they have not met anyone smarter than them because their environment is stupid, or they do not know that other people are not selfish like them. He decides that he will do what they want him to for now, as this is the best course. At the Decent Hotel, it is the opening day of the casino and dining lounge. All the decorations are made accordingly. Ti-moon and Choi are ready to cut the ribbon. The addresser announces the ribbon cutting ceremony and starts the countdown, and they cut the ribbon. The media takes coverage of the whole event. Choi shakes hands with Ti-moon, congratulates him on this big day, and says it was worth the wait. Ti-moon respectfully bows his shoulder and says thanks to Senator Choi. But in his mind, he calls him names and says if he had not gone back and forth between him and Gwan-ho, he would not have had to wait this long otherwise. Senator's secretary reminds him that it is time for his next appointment. So he leaves and says they will meet soon and discuss what they could not do today. The moon is still bowing and says best wishes to him for his trip. His secretary tells him that the senator is gone and he can stand straight now. Ti-moon is worried as he knows the senator will call to meet him again and means his secretary that he must prepare another box of apples for him. Then he asks everyone to let's go out to eat. One of them asks where they should go to eat. He says they will go to that same place with tasty dumplings, but they can order everything they want as a treat is on him. His underlying use of this opportunity fully collects all the food. But Ti-moon is happy today, so he is also enjoying it with them. His secretary pours him a drink. He praises him that he has done a good job. Suddenly, he becomes gloomy while drinking, so his secretary asks him the reason for this sudden sadness. He says if this is because of money to give the senator, he should not worry as he can make tons of money with this new business. Ti-moon takes another sip and says money is great, but everything is boring. He says that when he started at first, he liked it because everything has a set of rules. The strongest ones climb to the top. Just like that, he got rid of the weak ones and made it all the way here. But still, he needs to get down on his knees for those who are superior to him. Business rules are dirty. After dinner, he says goodbye to his men, who are bowing down before him. On his way home, he asks the driver to drop him there. His secretary says they are still a bit far from home, and he is also drunk. He makes the car stop as he wants to take a walk as he will get sober after a walk. Suddenly he sees Gwan-ho and his men in front of him. The moon smiles and asks where the others are. Suppose they are still in the hospital. Gwan-ho looks at him angrily and says he came here because he has to ask him some questions. Ti-moon says that he knows the rule. If they win against him, he will answer his question. Gwan-ho grins and orders his men to attack him. Ti-moon also gets ready and says he is completely sober now.